Peace be upon you all. I'm coming back. My name is Ahmed Sami. I'm a software engineer. Today we are going to start accessibility in mind, web development with accessibility in mind. The purpose of the first playlist of this accessibility series, it will be how to make sure that your application will be screen reader friendly, because accessibility has a different direction like screen reader, screen magnifiers, keyboard interaction, voice control, that you can control your screen using your voice, stuff like this. So we're going to cover first how to make sure that on the fly, while you are implementing your HTML component, you will make sure that this component is screen reader friendly, so at least users, when they are surfing your web application using the screen reader's assistive technology, they will be able at least to understand what is going on in your website. So to not waste your time, we are going to start our presentation with accessibility in mind by introducing what is accessibility. So let's get it on. Okay, what is accessibility? Accessibility or accessible website is a website that can be easily used by everyone regardless of their physical condition. So anyone should be able to use your website. It doesn't make difference if he can hear what is going on in the screen. So the user will be using like something like Perl, or if the user can see what is going on the screen, so the user should use screen readers. So the screen readers, we will announce each single element in the screen depend on some specific instructions we are going to speak about later. It also ensures user journey are kept simpler. By implementing accessibility in mind while you are developing your web application, you will make sure that your site is easy to use, because if user with some kind of disability able to use your website, so you can imagine what about the normal user when he is using your website also. It will be much easier for him. It forces designs to be clearer and well thought out, because you will be forced to use semantics of HTML, you will be used to use responsive web design approaches to make your website easy to use. By this way you will have more cleaner design and cleaner code. Accessibility should be the responsibility from the UX designer until the web development, so everyone is involved in this process, not just developer. Okay, it keeps code tidier, especially HTML, as we explained before, by using the semantics of HTML. It gets easier to more we do it, because when you get used to just write a few attributes in your on your HTML elements, with time you will get more experience and you will do this automatically even if you don't think about it. Okay, bottom, so I have a type of bottom, I don't have text, so I need to add some ARIA label and stuff like this. It will make it much easier. What is assistive technology? Assistive technology is any technology, regardless hardware or software, which will help the user to use your products, like screen reader assistive technology, using keyboard interactive, it's considered assistive technology, and so on. Screen magnifier, even the contrast of the color, it's considered as part of the accessibility also. For this presentation, we will be focusing on screen readers assistive technology, something such as nvda. Focusing on keyboard navigation and interaction will be a little bit covered in this series, but in generally to implement for drop-down menus, for example, for tabs, to follow a full pattern of keyboard interaction, it means that we need to use some underlying scripting like JavaScript, or you do some specific functionality in order to make your functions of keyboard navigation cleaner for this designer. But we are going to focus that even this drop-down menu will be accessible for a screen reader, so that will be a good approach at the beginning. Okay, AI A111 tips for information architecturing. So that we are going to use A11Y is a shortcut for 11 principle of accessibility. So accessibility in general If you can use anything using mouse, if you use website, so you should be able also to use the same functionality, and you can trigger the same event using keyboard. You make it easier to navigate your page content with the keyboard. In case we will speak about focus and browse mode, so there I will explain what you mean with make it more easier to navigate the page. Add keyboard instruction for new interaction pattern. For example, you have some like editor, a text editor or something, and you will implement some screen, some shortcuts like Ctrl+A to select all or Ctrl+D to delete. That also should be announceable to the user, as you can for sure do it. If you use external component, it should be implemented by default. If it's not, you should find the way to like work around this by adding some descriptions. We will speak about it also during this series. Okay, basics to make your site accessible. You're starting by following HTML5 standards. Please try to stop using div instead of navigation. If you will use already navigation, so use navigation. Use landmarks, use header, use footer, use section, use article. Because these things maybe for you as a developer won't make any sense, but it will make a huge impact for assistive technology to structure the page for the user, because user could navigate using the HTML, the header element, like from H1 to H5. Could use the content of header to understand where is already now. Could just listen navigation will understand there is a navigation. So HTML5 standard especially is more emphasized for the assistive technology to have more access to the structure of your page. It's not for fancy styling or fancy just HTML elements. No, you're using for the purpose of assistive technology. Remember. So as I explained, for the structure for more the user, please, if there is any original elements, so it's better to use it. Don't create div, then style it to be a button, for example. Don't create anchor tags and give it a role of a button. Except if there is some exceptional situation, it's something different. But try as you can to use the original semantic element, because that will be much better, even for you, much cleaner code. You don't need the hassle of what the semantic of this elements do. So please, if you need to use button, so use button. Stuff like this is much good. One of the things, for example, if you want to use like spin number to increment, decrement number, you can use inputs, give it a type of number, and then give it a step attribute to give it the step you would like to do. Like you want to step ahead by 1, by 2, by half, or whatever, how you want your step to work. That will be much better than creating the whole cycle, making your own span, then you style it, then after that will be difficult to be used. So try as you can to use the original element if it exists, and I'm pretty sure that it will be exist somewhere. So first of all, check HTML5 standard. Check the existence of the original element. After that, if you have no choice except to use some specific custom element, try to implement it with specific attributes. We're going to talk about it later. Mouse and keyboard events. That's very important. If you will use both mouse and keyboard, you should trigger the same event. Using mouse to click something, you should be able to use enter keyboard. So you can trigger also the same event. Sometimes button working by enter and space bar. Sometimes anchor tag with a attribute, with href attribute you will be able to trigger it using button, not using a space bar. So it is depends on your needs. But you should, if you can click the element, you should be able also to press the element. It's very important. Tab index, it will make sure that your element is focusable. In case if you need to custom span something, but this something will trigger some kind of event, click or something, so you need to make sure also to trigger the same event using the keyboard. But in some situations, the semantics like for div or span, they are not focusable elements. We will speak about focusable element later. Next. So to make sure they are focusable element, you give it tab index attribute, which will be next. Right? Okay, tab index could receive three types of value. -1, you use it especially if you would like later to change this focusability of the element using JavaScript. Tab index 0, it will be focusable by nature. Some of the elements already having tab index under the line. Tab index of number, that will change the order of the tab of the focusable element. So it's better to not use tab index by number, except if you have to change the position of some element on the page. That also rarely you will do it, but please don't use tab index with a specific number higher than 0 if just for fun. No, there is no need, because the order of the focusable element, we will speak about it next. Focusable element, any element you give it tab index 0 or higher, as we explained it, like buttons, already they are focusable by default. Input fields, also the same by default. And anchor tag with href attribute. Anchor tag without href attribute will not be focusable, will have tab index of -1. So if you would like to make your anchor tag keyboard interactive without making any fancy style, any fancy like functionality, just give it href. You can check what kind of href functionality will do. It will be empty or whatever, but make sure for example, sometimes in Angular, href with anchor tag with href empty, it will reload your page. So be careful with this one. You can avoid it using href, for example, and you give it a value of JavaScript, then semicolon, I think. After that, void, and you open the brackets and you give it a 0. By this way, it will be enter keyboard friendly, but not space bar. Okay. Follow general rules for applying headings. Something very, very important, these rules of heading. H1 always come after your navigation system as you can, because H1, it will be the main title. Like if you have a book, you have the main title of this book, it will be the H1. Try as you can to have only one H1 per page, because assistive technology will use this H1 per page to understand the main concept of what is this page about. Don't skip heading levels, which mean if you start by H1, don't jump to H3 or to H4. Don't do that, please. If you have to have something like should be visually as H something, so you can style this element using CSS in case if this element has no like useful information or will not be structuring something of the page. Headings are structured elements, not front end. As I told you, what will assistive technology do with headers or with headings? It will take these headings to create a similar to many site map of this page. So assistive technology such as nvda, I will explain about it later. When you press, for example, H, the user will have access to all the header in this page, and he can navigate using the headers. So the headers for the assistive technology, it looks like the visual menu for the visual people who can see the screen. So please, headings are structured elements, so don't skip headings level. Use only one H1 per page. That's very important for the semantics of your page. No visual styling as the only way to communicate what your headings are. So if you have heading 2, so the user will understand there is something here in heading 2 and will conclude it inside the page map menu for the assistive technology. Okay, for screen readers, we have two different modes. These two different modes, first is focus mode. What's the meaning of focus mode? When you navigate the page, if you will use the tab key from your keyboard, you will move forward from top to bottom. If you start using shift tab, you will move backward from bottom to top. That's how the focus mode works, using tab and shift tab. Each focusable element should have some indicators, like will be a border around this element when it gets focused, or you will have some like different color when it gets focused, it will be dimming. It should be some visual effect when the elements get focused. So that's very important, that the focusable element should be different when they are receiving focus. The focus order should start from the left top of your screen, then moving towards the right on the same line, then the next line start again from the left, then start moving right to on the same line, like this, like zigzag, from left to right, left to right, left to right, left to right, to the end of the page. That focus ordering will be correctly if you implement tab index with no higher than 0. By this way, the place of your element in your HTML code will determine the focus, how it's moved. So let's make sure we will speak about this later when we implement some of the code, because we will have a practical part in this series also. So that's about focus mode. You will be navigating the focusable elements only. You don't navigate all the page using focus mode. We spoke about focusable elements such as buttons, inputs, or element with with attribute tab index 0 or higher. Navigation order, as I explained, from top left to right, and so on, so on. Browse mode. What's mean browse mode? It's similarly exactly when you have a book and you start reading this book. If you read English book, you start to read this book from the top left, word by word, to the right, then you start again from the left again, the same line to the end. It's similar to focus mode, but the difference is that the browse mode will announce every single word that you have it on the page. So that's the difference. But the navigation is a little bit different. To navigate using browse mode, you can use up, down arrow, or up and down arrows key on your keyboard. But you can't use browse mode without screen reader, because screen reader will announce what you are browsing. But focus mode, you can use it without a screen reader. So for keyboard interactive, you can use it with no screen reader activity, because already you will have this visual indicators that this element got focus. But browse mode, we are using for the screen readers users, so they can read some articles on the page, or they can surf some websites or whatever. If you remember when we spoke about headings, that's why we're using headings, because by this way users can browse between headings to read. Like he has a lot of articles on the same page, so using headers will indicate that this is the beginning of the article, so the user can stop. The screen reader will announce this header as the article heading. So okay, if the user interesting, the user will continue navigating using the up and down arrows to read the article. So that's the purpose of the browse mode. Some situation you can just hide it from being discovered by assistive technology by using some ARIA attributes, which we'll speak about it next. ARIA, accessible rich internet applications, which means that your internet application will be accessible for everyone. Is a set of attributes which you can add it to your HTML element to make a web content and applications accessible to user via assistive technology such as screen readers in general. So for ARIA, we will just show a little bit of attributes, not all, but mostly. We have like the first attribute, most famous one is ARIA label. We will use it to give it a text. You write a specific text that you want the screen reader to read it, and it's usually we are using it with the focusable element. The only way with the focusable element to use ARIA label is when you don't have explicit text value for this element. ARIA labeled by, we are using it in case if we have more than elements like we have more than labels, for example, but we have only one focusable element. So we have more than value. This element should be announced when received the focus. By this way, we will give it a value of the ID which contains the text which we want the assistive technology to read. The order of the IDs will determine the order of the announcement. So the first one will be the first announced, and so on. ARIA described by, usually it's used with some, for example, if you have input field but you have more description, you want, like, you have a username and you want to tell the user that the username should be your email address. So you can make like a descriptive text, then you use ARIA describe by and you give it ID of this descriptive text. By this way the user will get additional information from focusing beside ARIA label already. Role is very important. Each element in the HTML language has a specific role or type. Button has a role or type of button. Anchor tag has a role of type link and stuff like this. In some situation you want give a specific role to specific element which could be this not the same element. Like for example, we have list. So we want to change the role of this list from being list and to make it none. So assistive technology will not see the list at all. So we can give it role of none or role of presentation. We will speak about this during our journey of the assistive technology and accessibility. ARIA Live, it's used usually for dynamically updated content. For example, user trying to enter his password, then he press submit, so there is something wrong happen on the page, so there is alert message came from somewhere. You should inform the user about this. So dynamically this content wasn't exist before the event of submission. So after the user submit, this content now is visible, so you should have a way to announce it. For this reason we are using ARIA Live in combination with role together on one element. By this way will make this element useful and have updated content for the user, like alert, for example, status, progress bar, or whatever. This is roles. ARIA Live will receive one of these three values. Polite will read if you think that user shouldn't be interrupted during surfing your site. You can use ARIA Live of polite. So after the user stopped his activity, he will receive such like error or alerting, or depends on the role. He will receive something, some message to tell him what. If you want immediately to interrupt the user because there is something really critical the user should be aware of, you can use assertive. If you don't want this alert to be, like, for example, announced for the user, just to use ARIA Live of off, and that's it, which will not be announced at all. So we will stop here, because next episodes we are going to speak how to install our screen reader, which we are going to use. It's called nvda. It's open source free screen readers. We will show you how to install the screen readers, how to using it, because we will continue our journey by recommendation of some elements while you are implementing these elements in your web application. So I'm sorry for like long speech, but it's really important to understand the importance of accessibility for your web application. It's something will increase your value as a developer, increase the revenue of your website if you look from the point of view of financial, will increase the morality of your website also, because you're already participating that everyone will have the equal rights to use your website. So in all cases you are the winner. For that reason we are having this series of accessibility. So until then, have a nice and great coding. See you for next time. Have a great time. Bye bye.